Welcome once again to the Anderson Law Power Hour podcast, here live from Attorney Tim Anderson's offices in Virginia Beach. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast realized here for solely for the purpose of information. The podcast, again, does not constitute legal advice. Also, there's no client-attorney privilege. Feel free to ask your questions. Chime in on Facebook. Legal consultation services will be determined at the time of your appointment. Anderson Law is a firm located at 2492 North Landing Road, Suite 104 here in Virginia Beach. Online, you probably have already discovered, but virginialawoffice.com, virginialawoffice.com, 757-800-1000, 757-800-1000 is the number to call if you have any questions or would like to take advantage of the legal services here. Now, on this edition of the Anderson Law Power Hour podcast, Attorney Anderson, of course, always offers us some insight and strategies, ways we can engage our government. And as we learn about the upcoming Super Tuesday, do you feel the burn, baby? Do you feel it?
Feeling the burn. Feeling the burn.
I don't know. He sure is an interesting character. I'll have to practice his voice impersonations. But go ahead.
So Bernie Sanders is in the lead.
I know.
I mean, there's no dispute about that. Right. Bernie Sanders is in the lead. Here, let me read this to you.
Yeah.
That is a quote from a Scottish judge from the 18th century. These words. A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy, always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations has been about 200 years. These nations have progressed through this sequence, from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, from selfishness to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and from dependence back to bondage. Mm-hmm. That was written 200 years ago. And does that not describe the United States?
Boy, poignant.
Let's look at where we are. So bondage to spiritual faith. I mean, that's what that's what the whole Declaration of Independence was about, right? And then from spiritual faith to great courage, we went through the Industrial Revolution, we went through World War II, the baby boomers, the greatest generation, all of these things. And then abundance, from liberty to abundance. We've had everything we've needed in this country, right?
Yes.
Everything we've needed. And then from abundance to selfishness, right? And so, that's been happening. And then from selfishness to apathy. Talk about apathy. We only had 40% of the people vote in the 2019 election.
That's right, man, yeah.
And apathy to dependence. Now we have more people on social welfare programs than ever before. And, from dependence back into bondage. And so we are literally watching the Judge Tytler's words play out in the United States.
So many.
Why is Bernie Sanders in the lead? Because everything's free. Right? Everything's free. Tax the super rich 77% and give it to everybody else. Free college, free health care, free this, free that. Minimum wage comes up. Everything's free, and also you're going to get paid more. Who's not going to want to vote for that, right? Who's not going to want that? And every time, literally, if you watch the Democrat conventions, all they're trying to do is one-up each other on what more can they give away. No longer have to pay back student loans. College is free. Everything is free. The healthcare is free. And how we're going to pay it? We're going to tax the super wealthy, and that's how we're going to pay for everything. And the healthcare bill, $30 trillion.
Yes, I remember.
$30 trillion. Now listen, we're $24 trillion in debt as it is. I guarantee you that the United States credit card is not going to be extended another $30 trillion, right? And so everything's free. And that's how Bernie Sanders and his socialist partners are in the lead. People are just voting for the person who's going to give them free, because now you've created this dependent society. Lots of people in the Democrat Party are on social programs, and they want more. They want more. Of course they want more. Who doesn't want more? And they just keep freeing it. And now now we have this guy, this open socialist.
Open
Socialist doesn't even apologize for it.
Right.
Open socialist says, "Hey, we are, I'm the leader of the pack in the Democrat Party," and wow.
Yeah. What we used to say in radio was always a demographic issue. He's appealing to the younger folks.
Yes.
Primarily, I would say.
I mean, how we have raised our children. Just to, everybody gets a trophy and nothing bad can happen to them. God forbid they would actually have to go out and get a job and actually have to pay for their own college and work their way through this. God forbid, it should all be free and the money just magically comes. We are in trouble. We are in trouble with the mentality of the young people. I mean, I remember my dad used to say, "Oh, you whippersnappers never knew what a hard day's work was if it came and kicked you in the ass."
Right.
I feel like I've turned it into my dad in that way, though, right?
I feel the same way too. Yeah.
I mean, the younger people, everything should be free. There should be no consequences. Everybody, we should let anybody in that we want to let in. There's no consequences to having open borders. We can override the United States with as many people as can come in because there's no consequences to anything. And the truth and the reality is that that we are somewhere between selfishness to apathy. We're definitely past that, and from apathy to dependence, we're right in that phase, apathy to dependence, because more people are on the public, the public assistance plans than ever before. And then from the final step is the collapse of the democracy and dependence back into bondage. And don't zing me, because I know we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic, I get that. Yeah. But the idea of democracy being that we can elect our own government and we get to pick who our leaders are and all of that, we're at the final in the United States. And then right after bondage comes a dictator. Right? Because what you have is you have super inflation and somebody has to come in and strong arm the country back into some type of controllable situation. But, Barack Obama, who I admittedly like him quite a bit. Barack Obama said that we have to secure the southern border. Right? He said that, and there were plans on having to put up a wall on the southern border, and his own plans were to fortify the southern border because he knew you can't just let anybody you want come into your country. And now we're at a point where you even talk about a wall, and you're a racist.
Because it comes from a conservative primarily.
Right. But you're essentially a racist. I saw something the other day that, what's a racist? A racist is somebody that wins an argument with a liberal, right? Okay. Because, if you win, you're a racist, If you say anything that resembles any logic, and even what the Democrats said just 10 years ago, that we have to have controls. Clinton said it, Barack Obama said it, even Hillary Clinton said it, we have to have, border control, and now there's no border control, and now we're seeing this infestation in Virginia, now with undocumented workers being allowed to drive now legally, with no consequences, no immigration consequences. We're going to allow them to have in-state tuition with no consequences. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. I want to go back to Bernie and the Republicans versus Democratic candidates. Barack Obama had a certain appeal to the young folks, but I thought he had more tangible, more practical, more realistic goals and agendas. With Bernie Sanders, it's literally all over the place.
It is unbelievable.
It's just all over the place. And when you think about the presidential Democratic candidates, it seems as though the word we use, you won't have any moxie. You don't have it. And I'm at this point, I don't know. I don't know who we're going to vote for. I have to wait until September or later.
I don't think that Barack Obama is electable today.
Oh, no.
If he were to come on the scene today, he's not crazy enough.
Right.
And when Barack Obama got elected, I was super concerned about how super liberal he was at that time, and he's not even close to being liberal enough to pacify the extreme progressive side of it. Anyway, guys, by the way, if you want to call us and be part of the show, 800-1000. It'll go right to the cell phone. You can join in, 757-800-1000. If you want to comment on this first 10 minutes of commentary, we haven't really talked about the law, but man, had to get that off my chest.
I'm prepared with all of these notes.
I know. He's got all these notes to talk about what's been happening.
Okay.
But Bernie Sanders, and not only are his policies outrageous, but he's going to be like 81 years old.
I know.
If he becomes the first elected president, at that age, 81. Ronald Reagan was, I think, 82 when he finished his term, and I'm a big Ronald Reagan fan, but he was a hot mess in his second term. Ronald Reagan was a hot mess, and he was losing it, and it just is
Alzheimer's.
It's just unbelievably scary to think that some guy who's 81 years old would become the leader of the free world on his first term. Theoretically, for most presidents make it 2 terms, so we're going to have a president be 90 years old when he leaves office. I mean, really? Seriously?
Wow.
You think that could happen? Look at Barack Obama. What happened to him in his first 2 years of his term? He had hair like yours.
Right.
He was a young-looking dude. He looked like a grandfather, at the midterm elections. And that was when his party controlled everything, and it obviously went downhill from there for him. So I cannot believe what the Democrats are doing, pushing Bernie Sanders as the number one choice. Out of all the Democrats out there, he's the number one choice. To defeat Donald Trump, according to the Democrats, right? Because you're not just voting for the guy you want to run, but you're voting for the guy that you think can beat the Republican, right? And Bernie's the answer, at least according to 50-50 in Iowa. He won in New Hampshire. He won in Nevada. He's flying into South Carolina pretty strong. There are only 3 people that seem to still be in the race: are Sanders, Buttigieg,
and Warren.
I was going to say Bloomberg.
Of course, not
I think
Bloomberg.
Warren's pretty much out of money.
That's a good point.
I think she's going to drop out any day. But Bloomberg, and Bloomberg, multi-billionaire, just like Donald Trump, has more women trouble than clearly Donald Trump has with all of his NDAs. And so if the Democrats are dumb enough to put him forward, then essentially you got 2 white old men who both have women problems. So you lose all the high ground on the Democrat side of we're pro woman and all that. You're going to lose all that. And so really, I think you get stuck with Buttigieg, Mayor Buttigieg, and that's that guy's, he's a young dude. I think he's 40 years old or so. And I mean, combat veteran, and you kind of hope. I think if you're a Democrat watching this show, you kind of hope that's what happens, even though that can't have been your first choice. In the way things are. So
and then inevitably the conversation comes down to the quote unquote black vote. And Bloomberg is being beat up because of what he did when he was the stop and frisk. So I don't think people are going to give him. There's a trust factor. That's a real issue, and he hasn't answered it intelligently. There's always another loophole or another reason or things that he didn't discover that he should have known then. And of course, what we often talk about on your program is, of course, his position on gun safety or gun rights. It's like, yo, man, if it has more than 3 bullets and you can shoot a deer, it's like, okay, somebody needs to school Bloomberg on that. But he's got the clout, he's got the money, I should say.
I mean, I've read something. He spent $500 million already. $500 million he spent on his own presidential campaign. So, got anything good over there? Any questions? All right, Tara's still watching. All right, so we got some crazy stuff going on in our own state with Richmond, right?
That's right.
Did you already have Bernie Sanders there on the list before you even decided to
I just mentioned it. Yep, I know you kind of touch on it.
I never get to sit right next to him. I can't note, so,
well, I'm thinking about Super Tuesday coming up here in just a couple of days, and we've got to be prepared for that. And that's going to be pretty exciting. The whole 2020 has been exciting, January and February.
Well, we get asked. I've gotten asked that a few times. Let me address this one thing. So the question is can you vote in the Super Tuesday election, the primaries, if you are a Republican? Okay, so the answer to that question is this, is that there are no such thing as Republican and Democrat voters in Virginia as far as the Board of Elections is concerned. So you don't register as a Republican or a Democrat, you're just a registered voter. And so what the law says is that you cannot vote in the two presidential primaries.
Right.
So Donald Trump is not being primaried in Virginia. So there's nobody to vote for on the Republican side. So you can vote for anybody you want in the Democrat side if you want to do that, right? However, here's the problem with voting, and I'll tell you this. Your data is for sale. And how you vote is for sale. And although nobody knows specifically who you vote for when you vote, what they do know is they know that Tim Anderson voted in the Democrat primary in 2020.
Right.
And Democrat operatives will buy that information from the VEC, and then all of a sudden now what you have is Democrat door knockers at your house talking to you about their candidates, trying to get you to sign petitions for them to be on there. You have mail coming to your house from the Democrats. So your little gig about wanting to go and vote is going to probably result in not too many people vote in primaries. And so when you do vote in a primary, you're a dedicated voter, and you're probably going to see on wave of Democrat solicitations down the road. For me, I'm not voting for the Democrats, right? I mean, I'm not a Democrat. I don't care what they do. I mean, it's kind of fun to watch from a distance, but I don't care what they do. But there's nothing illegal in Virginia about voting for a Democrat. The only thing that might zing you is if you do vote in the Democrat primary, you may disqualify yourself from becoming a delegate in the Republican Party at a convention with 5 years.
Okay, so
I mean, that doesn't.
How many people? Right? Yeah.
I'm pretty into politics. I've never been asked to be a delegate. Probably nobody up on here would ever be a delegate either. But that's one consequence you may have in the Republican Party, is that if you voted in the Democrat primaries, it could disqualify you. But other than that, I can't really see a downside to doing it, except that you're going to get tons of probably Democrat literature for the next multiple numbers of years, and even more important, Virginia is not the make it or break it state of who the Democrat, is going to be.
We have 12 or 13.
Yeah, I think that's right.
12,
I think that's right. 12 or 13 for Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
California and New York and these big states where the big delegates is where is going to make the ultimate decision of who's going to win the nomination. So, your one little vote is not going to change anything. It's probably just going to literally make your life miserable getting a bunch of Democrat materials if you're not a Democrat, down the road. So.
I collected those from the past election. It was, this one says the same thing about that candidate, and then this candidate takes an excerpt and puts it on that candidate's materials. It's like, it's almost laughable. Really. There was no distinction except for the names and male and female.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
I collected those.
I mean, honestly, if it does come down to Bernie Sanders, Bloomberg, or Buttigieg, if you kind of hope it becomes Bloomberg or Sanders, because either one of them, Donald Trump has that in the bag. It almost seems like Donald Trump is rooting for Bernie Sanders. He's always talking about how unfair the Democrats have been to him, and you almost think he kind of wants that, because that would be a great fight, an easy fight for Donald Trump to win. But if somebody like Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren, somebody more moderate got in there. Not that Elizabeth Warren's moderate, but compared to these other ones, Elizabeth Warren is like a conservative. So if one of those got in, it could possibly draw some Republicans and some independents their way. But if it's Bernie Sanders or Bloomberg, it's going to be I would predict a landslide for Donald Trump. So, so in a lot of ways, if you are going to vote, I would vote for Bernie Sanders. Because you kind of want that guy to win if you're a Republican. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what else you got.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. I was leading into the notion over the last couple of years. If you've ever had that your vote doesn't count. I mean, look what we've seen here in Virginia. The Democrats took control of the General Assembly in this last election, and we've been talking about this. It's like, you do an outstanding job. It's like I come to a college lecture every time when I watch your Facebook posts and try to get ready for the show. It's evident that your votes do count. in many capacities, particularly when it comes to the state and local elections and local matters.
I mean, there's a delegate that my neighborhood, I live over in Virginia Beach in the Bayside area, and my delegate, which is Nancy Guy, she's a Democrat, she won by 34 votes. 34 votes.
Okay.
I mean, and so some of these elections were, within 100 people difference.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've all heard that 25 Democrats didn't even get opposed. Well, there was a bunch of Republicans that didn't get opposed either. So that just happens. I mean, the parties make a decision that there's no reason to put a Democrat and spend any real competition out in Wise County, okay? Because no chance of Democrats getting elected in Wise County. Republicans make those same concessions up in Northern Virginia, where there's really no chance that that's gonna happen. So there were some Republicans that ran unopposed. There were some Democrats that ran unopposed. That is not why the Democrats won. Why the Democrats won is that we only had 40% of the people show up and vote. Had 50% showed up and vote, it would have changed. It would have changed everything, and we would be doing a different thing right now. We would not be talking about all the craziness that's going to come out of Richmond this year.
I want to use a word from the person you quoted: apathy.
Apathy.
Yeah. Okay.
We are, it's not just my vote doesn't count. It's, I'm too busy to vote. Really? I mean, seriously? And then, you're too busy to vote, but you have all the time in the world to show up for these sanctuary movements. And
you're stepping on some folks' toes, Tim.
I mean, I'm just saying, it would have been a lot easier if you just showed up and voted, right?
Right, okay.
And I'm not saying that the people who went to the sanctuary things didn't vote. I'm saying there are certainly people that were at those sanctuary meetings that did not vote. And had they voted, who knows what the different outcome may have been. And, because we know only 40% of the people showed up. And that's a fact, and that's an apathetic fact. Yeah. Our country does not vote. And even in the presidentials, I mean, I believe that like 100 million people vote for president, right? So it's always about 50 million one way or 50 million the other. There's almost like 400 million people in the United States.
Right.
And I get a lot of them are kids, and a lot of them, in prison and all that. But nonetheless, I mean, that's not very much. That's probably close to 40 to 50% of the whole nation votes for the president.
Right.
And so it would be great to see an 85% turnout, in a constitutional republic where people get to decide who they want to vote.
Right, that would be
amazing, But when these people in Richmond say the voters voted us in, no, they didn't. 40% of the people voted, and half of them were Republicans. So the other half, so you get 20% of the people of the state voted for you. That's not the state wants this. It's 20% of the population of Virginia wants this. I mean, let's be truthful, right? Let's be honest. The people didn't vote. 20% of of the people that voted were Democrats, and they voted.
You're cutting through it. I got you.
So get to it. Get to the facts, the truth.
All right. So we're all thinking about what's happening now, still in Richmond, and we've all still have our eyes on July 1st, when a lot of these are going to likely become laws that are going to affect, of course, the Second Amendment rights. Going to affect you in your wallet and everything. And I caught some of your posts on Facebook in the last couple of days. Anderson Law, Tim Anderson, and pretty interesting things. And this keeps coming up, and I think you addressed it quite some time when we first started doing the shows. But going back to background checks under HB 961, background checks at gun shows, they are immediate?
Yeah. So there's two ways you can buy a gun at a gun show, right? One way is there's dealers out there. And to do that, you have to fill out the federal forms and the state forms and do a background check. So that already exists, all right, at the gun show. The other kind of way you can buy a gun is some guy has a gun on his back and he says for sale, and you walk up to the guy and you say, hey, I'll give you $400 for the gun. And he's like, all right. And you just do that private transaction there. And basically that's called a private party transaction. And that will now require a background check to do that. Right. So you're going to have to take that transaction to one of the dealers and pay the dealer, $20 or $30 to do the paperwork to do the background check. And you know, it doesn't always happen at gun shows. It could happen just, you know, like, hey, Mark, I have this gun. You want to buy this gun? And so if we're going to do that after July 1, we have to get a gun shop involved for me to do that with you. So that's House Bill 2.
Okay.
And that passed the Senate Judiciary yesterday. It's going to go to the Senate floor. It's gonna get voted in. That's going to become law. There's no chance that is not going to become law. It will be a misdemeanor to not follow through with that.
It was going to be a felony, now knocked down to misdemeanor. Okay.
Yep, and you can thank a Democrat named Chap Peterson from Northern Virginia for at least softening the bill up for that. A Democrat did that. And Chap Peterson's a lawyer, so he's been kind of he's still a Democrat, but he's probably my favorite Democrat in Richmond right now because he's made lots of positive. He softened the bills up.
Okay.
And that will be something we'll appreciate down the road.
All right. You, of course, with your defensive tactics, you teach the concealed carry course. It's a long time ago I took one, and I do see ads. You Google something, and it ends up all over your media, Facebook and everything. And I thought about online and said, I'd rather go in person. Yeah. So now there's a difference that those online courses may not demonstrate your proficiency or competence in handling a firearm.
Right. Yeah. So in order to be able to get to demonstrate firearm proficiency, you'll have to take the class live. Now that rule is going to look like that'll take effect on January 1, 2021, so you can still do the videos for the rest of the year. But if you have not gotten your permit and you can't demonstrate competency some other way, like being a military guy or being a police officer or having a DD-214, something like that, if you can't otherwise demonstrate it, hunter safety course, then you will have to take the course in person. Now, it's still not a shooting course. You don't have to fire anything, but you would have to take the course in person.
Yeah. From your experience, you recommend in person?
Well, I mean, I teach it, and so people will say I'm biased on that, but I like in person because a lot of the times in my classes, students are asking questions.
That's right.
And we're feeding off of each other. When you're in a classroom setting, one person asks a question, and it provokes somebody else to ask a question, and so the learning, I think, is more effective. But from this standpoint, I'll say this. I think having to take a class to demonstrate firearm competency so you can carry concealed is stupid. I think it's a dumb idea. Because look, here's the deal. I can own a gun. I don't have to take any class to buy a gun and to own a gun. But because I want to carry the gun inside my pants, I have to take a class for that. Like, how is that any different? I have the gun. I could have it holstered, no class. But if I want to put the gun in my pants, I have to take a class. I think that's stupid.
Never thought about it from that perspective. I get what you're saying.
If you want to have to make somebody take a class, it should be the buyer. The buyer should have to take the class. The buyer should have to be exposed to rules and regulations about firearm ownership, not the guy trying to get a concealed carry permit, if you're going to do it at all, right? But it's a dumb idea that you have to take a class to be able to carry concealed. But that's what they've said, and there's no getting around that. It's just going to be you're going to have to do it now in person after January 1.
All right. And then speaking of what we were talking about here with the gun rights and so forth, today's the 25th. Norfolk City Council, the Stand with Virginia Support the Second Amendment resolution is going forth. So make sure if you're in the city of Norfolk.
That's today, right? Tonight?
That's right. Yep.
That's
tonight. Norfolk City
Council. They had a hard time in Norfolk getting this thing through. They won't even vote on it.
Right.
They won't even vote on it. If you live in Norfolk, you need to run for city council. You watching this, the 1,000 people watching this right now, somebody in Norfolk needs to run for city council. These jackbags won't even put it on the agenda. One of the guys fell asleep, and you would think that these council people would put it on the agenda and just up or down, yes or no vote on it, right? So they don't have to do this every period of time. It's so stupid that they won't even put it on the agenda. I think it is on the agenda now, finally. But we're at the end of the General Assembly session, and Norfolk still hasn't said yes or no. What a joke! Right. Shame on you, Norfolk.
May 5th, of course, right around the corner. Looking forward to
May
a lot
5th,
of elections locally.
Chesapeake and Hampton, I know for sure. Does Newport News have a
Newport News?
Yeah, Newport News as well. So so Hampton was not easy to deal with. Newport News did not go that way of the opening of sanctuary. So maybe you should run for council, Mark. Also, you only have to have 125 signatures to get on the ballot. Who would vote for Mark Wallace in 24 News? Right?
I think they know me too.
And so that would be let's vote for Mark. That's going to be come up with a catchy tagline, Tara, for Mark.
The guy with the voice. That's what they know me as.
Yeah, really. Gargantuan.
The guy voice for you. All
That's right. You should do that.
All right. So the background checks knocked down to a misdemeanor, concealed carry. That's what we're thinking about. And we talk about the localities, and that's of course how it's going to really come down to the brass tacks, so to speak. The localities will have the authority to vote on gun-free zones and other measures.
What a joke that's going to be. So anyway, so here's the deal. Localities can decide now that's going to pass. Localities are going to be able to decide if they want to declare a gun-free zone at a governmental building, right? And so governmental buildings, rec centers, parks, and permitted events, and the streets adjacent to permitted events. And so gun-free zones, they can just, the studies get to decide if they want to do it. It's not compulsory, it's allowable, permissive, and the localities get to decide if they want to do it. And so what I've suggested is that we're going to now have to do this Second Amendment sanctuary thing all over again, go back to localities, ask the localities to pass an ordinance that they expressly will not exercise the authority given to them by the General Assembly. They don't have to take it. They're allowed. It's permissive. And so we want the cities, like City of Virginia Beach, to pass an ordinance that says, no, we're not going to exercise this authority. Now, I know that Southampton County, I think, has that coming up tonight. I know I've made a video about this and they're pushing that up there. But if you're going to get involved in this, it needs to be an ordinance. And I did create a very simple ordinance on our Facebook page. Go back to February 14th on my Facebook page. On that day, there's a video with that ordinance on there. So that's on February 14th. And we're going to have to do all this over again. And the cities that declared themselves sanctuaries, which Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Isle of White County, all that stuff.
Friends of Pocosin, they did too. Yeah, that's great. All right, so 800-1000, a few more minutes left on the Anderson Law Power Hour podcast.
Power half hour today, right? Because we started a little bit late. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. 800-1000. Your questions will be live here for the next couple minutes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I was to ever use the word or the phrase that it can be dirty. Politics can be dirty.
Yeah.
Man, this is what I found here. This is from Senator Bill Stanley. Tonight, as he was talking on the Senate floor, I tried to amend the state budget to give our men and women of our sheriff's departments a 3% raise for this year. It was defeated with all Democrats voting no. And so when I went to get a vote count from the clerk, Majority Leader Dick Saslaw, which you had, I don't want to say vendetta, but you were going after him. And the Saslaw came up and said this to me. Hey, Stanley, you want to know why your sheriffs didn't get a raise? Because they came to our communities and said they weren't going to enforce our laws. And when I said which law he was talking about, he said gun control. I was shocked that the Democrats are punishing our law enforcement for their choice to protect our citizens' Second Amendment rights. That's from Senator Bill Stanley.
That's 100% true. And he admitted to saying it.
Yeah.
Dick Saslaw came out and said what he said was true. Can you imagine that? I mean, can you just imagine that? Right?
You're trying to make a living, protect the judges, protect the courts, and operate the prisons. And I know, won't say any name, but it's not a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
You need that second job, because I have a good friend who worked at that job, and he worked at 7-Eleven. So it's like, man, they could sure use a raise.
Starting salary for some sheriffs is about $31,000 a year. Okay. Sheriffs. Now they just kicked up minimum wage to $15 an hour over the next 5 or 6 years. It'll be $15. The burger flipper is entitled to a $30,000 a year job according to the Democrats, because that's $15 an hour. 15.
Right.
30,000.
Yeah.
30,000. So
wow.
The burger flipper, fast food worker, high school kid, full-time high school kid is entitled to $30,000 a year, but the sheriffs are, who are making $31,000, we're not going to give them a raise. If you have a family of 4 and you make $31,000 a year, you are below the poverty line and you get WIC.
That's tight, Bubba.
I mean, that is the circumstances that some people find themselves in, especially in southwestern Virginia. And so why would you want to be a sheriff working in a stinky jail, dealing with inmates all day long, making $15 an hour, when you could do something else with your time, making close to that, in somewhere else. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to like increase their pay to, they have a crappy job. It's an extremely important job to society. Yeah. Most of them are in the jails, working the jails. And so, some communities, they're completely the only law enforcement as well. And so, they have not a great job, and they're just saying, hey, look, we need to kick their thing up. And the budget allows them to get a $200 bonus this year, one-time bonus, and then next year they get a 3% raise. And Stanley was saying, hey, we probably need to kick up a little bit more money from now. And it was in the budget. They could have done it. They said no, because some of the sheriffs, not all, some of the sheriffs came forward and said, we're not going to enforce your unconstitutional gun laws. And so now they're going to punish 20,000, I think, sheriffs statewide. I think that's the number I read, is 20,000 sheriffs in the state. They're going to punish all those people with a 3% raise this year, because 5 or 6 loudmouth sheriffs came up and said, we're not going to support, rightfully so, we're not going to support these unconstitutional gun laws, so we're going to punish 20,000 people because 5 or 6 sheriffs came up and were vocal against us. I can't believe that. I can't believe that. And I hope, if you're a sheriff's deputy, I hope there's a mass exodus of people just quitting. I mean, if everybody would go on strike in the sheriff's office, who's going to watch the jails? Right. They need to go on strike as a collective body. They need to strike, and let's see how quickly they get their raise then, because that's what needs to happen. It is shocking. Now, there are some sheriffs up in Northern Virginia that are making like $70,000 a year. That's true. That's how it is. But for the vast majority of them in the Southwest, and even out here in, I think, Hampton Roads, I think they start at like in the 36, 37,000 range. It's not huge money. And they're saying no to these guys because of, some sheriffs coming out saying, hey, we're not going to enforce these gun laws. I can't believe it. And I can't believe, one, he said it. Why did Dick Saslot feel like he needed to say that? That may have been the back dealings the Democrats decided to do, but why would he say that? And then secondly, why would he admit that he said it, when asked? It's like, golly, I mean, you're just showing how terrible it is, in politics with the Democrats in control right now. It's just unbelievable. So for those of you who are sheriffs out there, sheriff deputies, thank you for your service. I hope that cooler heads prevail next year. You're definitely getting a raise next year, if that's of any consolation, but unbelievable.
I know, man. Wow.
Unbelievable. Now, I'll tell you this, sheriffs, your localities can kick in income. And so what you may want to do, like if you were in a city like Virginia Beach, you may want to go to the city council and ask the city council to subsidize more money to the deputies, so that maybe you could get your raise that way. The localities can send money to the sheriff's office, and that might be something that you do. All right, well, I guess we're out of time. Anderson Law Power half hour today. Tim Anderson and Mark Rawlson. It's usually an hour, but we started late. That was my fault. Sorry about that. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.